I had just kind of came home from, I been in prison and everything. I went when I was a teenager. So, I kind of came back and I was out at an event, and there was a rapper there from our city who was signing CDs. This is back when CDs were still, I think he was at this video store. And he was like, Atiba, he was like, man, what's up, bro? He ran out. I'm like, look at him, and I'm like, where do I know you from? He's like, we went to school together. And goes through this whole thing, man. So good to see you and everything. And he was like, he gave me one of his CDs. He was like, bro, like, come on tour with me, hang with me, this and that. And I was like, man, I'm proud of you, bro. This is good, And the last thing I thought this dude's CD was a gangster rap CD. When I tell you this dude was like not that dude, this dude was like bookworm central. Like he wasn't a dude that seen no parts of the streets, and he had put out a gangster. And I was just like confused. I was like, what? Like it sound good, but none of it was him.
Do nonprofits who say they're there to stop the violence really believe in their mission, or do they have ulterior motives? Welcome to End the Violence. Welcome back to End the Violence. I'm Dr. G. I'm a retired veterinarian who's always looking for knowledge. Today I have both my partners, Atiba and Pastor Andre, with me. Atiba comes from Columbus, Ohio. He works for End the Violence, and he's learned his respect the hard way. So Atiba, I am going to start with you. Are there nonprofits out there that believe that they're there to end the violence, or at least that's the message they're trying to portray, but truly they're not in it for the right reasons?
Yeah, I think the larger majority of ad agencies out there now are not in it for the right reasons. And I do want to kind of speak on that a little bit, because that's kind of throwing a lot of agencies under the bus. But the reality is we've created a system where everybody really, for lack of a better word, copies what you know uh uh again, for lack of a better word, the oppressor. We will use that word, and I would say the oppressor when it comes to poor people has been the government. In a lot of aspects, people think, oh, the government's there to get money to protect, people who don't have anyone to advocate for them. How would these mothers get food? How would these families get clothing? They're poor. We need more services. And I'm one of those firm believers that we really just need them to leave us alone, you know, and the money that they're pulling out of our community doesn't make it back to our community. And this is what I mean by that. The majority of organizations out there in here in Central Ohio consume a lot of resources to do what they do. But what they're doing more than anything is employing people versus really reaching a community. So you you have a lot of people that are making decisions about these organizations, and their policy people, or their clinicians, or the people who don't really have a vested interest in changing the community, or don't come from these communities. So it's like a playbook, a scripted book. The government puts out funding or a grant, and no matter what the grant or the funding is, the agencies are so concerned with securing those dollars. It doesn't matter to them if they do it at the expense of people at the bottom, the community. So if your main objective is securing all of the funding that comes for social initiatives, that comes for inner city communities, or you say, hey, we're a grassroots agency, we're trying to work with the people. You These agencies don't stand up to government and say, hey, you put this funding out here, And some of these, some of the tracking, some of what you're looking for as outcomes don't tell the whole story. You're not going to have an agency that's going to challenge their funding agency. They're going to really try to meet whatever the funder is telling them to do, whether it's right or not. So I think in the long run, we're really hurting communities when we take that approach, because a lot of these, the government doesn't really know how to curb violence or how to really deal with some of the social ills, and the agencies that are being funded to go out and help these people, they're more concerned about getting the funding than they are actually helping the community. So there's a lot of examples, but I'll just say that for now.
But hold on a sec. But I mean, just to clarify, we're talking 6-7 figures grants. We're not talking like $5,000. We're talking about millions at times, right?
What is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say here in Central Ohio, I would say for violence prevention and intervention, in our local government, probably easy anywhere between like 30 and $50 million a year is spent on those initiatives, but it doesn't really reach the community in a practical way. Now they'll say we're doing intervention work, but really they're doing prevention work. So you see a lot of agencies out here passing out information. We're going to canvass an area. We're going to put this on a porch. We're going to go clean up a neighborhood, and we're going to all have all these kids out here in t-shirts, and we're going to make a big show of it. Most of those funds and most of those resources or most of those activities don't even reach the people that you're talking about. Most of these organizations work 9 to 5 jobs, just like government and everybody else. But most of the crime happens in the after hours. There's no, who's out there 8 p.m. to 2 or 3 in the morning looking at these communities. But they'll take the money and they'll say, we're effective. We reach this many people. We talk to this many people in the community, but are they really intervening? Are they really going into the communities and talking to the shooters? They'll say, hey, we're doing intervention work, but everybody that they're talking to is just someone who may be considered at risk. If you're doing intervention work, you're putting yourself in the front lines of dealing with the people that are toting guns, or dealing with the people that got, drugs in their pocket when they're talking to you. And that's not what most of these agencies are doing. Most of these agencies are out there, passing out flyers and making a big show. They bring kids into the community to wear these t-shirts. Most of these agencies aren't going in the community and pulling, kids who actually live there out. You'll see, I mean, what kids look like that come from the inner city versus kids that come from the suburbs. It's a show. So it's like we got to show our funders the work that we're doing. We got to make a good display of it. We have to be out here so that everybody can see what we're doing. But, ask those agencies that are doing intervention and prevention, like, how many guns have you taken off of people? How many, really actually incidents did you deter? Was somebody over here about to kill somebody or kill themselves? Was there, active fight about to take out? And these guys pull guns out, and you had guys out there like, man, hold up, chill, bro. What's going on? Let me holler at y'all. Was somebody loading up about to go down the street and do a drive-by, and your workers showed up and was like, man, let me go talk to him. Hold down, bro. Let me go talk, see the fuck is going on. Just chill a minute. That's not the kind of stuff we're talking about. We're celebrating and glamorizing, passing out flyers. I'm just being honest.
Yeah, you know, with the original question that you asked, Atiba, I would say that these organizations, and because I'm in the pastoral space, the nonprofit space, I've run into a lot of it. There are organizations that are doing what they say they're going to do. And then there are those, again, that are more akin to carpetbagging. The past is for reference, not for residence. And so we're not going to live there, but we will reference the fact that there was a time in U.S. history where funds from Congress were being handed out to help with poorer communities to get up on their feet. And carpetbaggers moved in and collected those funds, and those funds were filtered out of the very communities they were supposed to help. So we have the same kind of situation today. When you talk about 6 figures and 7 figures, I'll give you almost exact figures. Here in the state of Florida, they have the crime prevention program through the state, and there's $360,000 for each particular is granted for each organization that takes on this program. You have to have a total of 10 kids that you meet with for an hour a week, and you also meet with their parents and things like that, right? But again, an hour a week, and you're getting $360,000 for the year. So, you can bring in special speakers, all these rah-rah programs like Atiba talked about, but at the end of the day, did it actually transform the community or otherwise? So I mean, you point out a lot of nuances, Atiba, that we probably could address here today. And that is the reality of whether or not these programs are effective. But a lot of money is being tossed and will continue to be given because when we complain about a $6 million toilet on a spacecraft that's going that NASA sending to space, and we say, why don't we invest in our communities? We are investing. It's just not being effectively expended. Mhm.
Let me ask you guys, what's the bigger red flag? Flashy claims, lack of roots in the neighborhood, or opaque finances?
All of the above.
All the above?
It's the whirlwind that's happening currently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, because there's a lot of nonprofits, not just in urban, in general, that make these great claims just to get that hook, right?
Mhm.
And then people just believe what they're going to do is what they're doing. Yet nobody seems to ask exactly where everything goes, right? And love it or hate it, we talk about Doge and everything that was being uncovered. It's like half the country was pissed off that things were getting uncovered. So, how do we get people to start questioning these nonprofits truly who say they're helping the community, what they're truly doing to the for the community?
Yeah. I think the problem is this. When you talk about the community and the people, the majority of people running like the nonprofit organizations, especially the larger nonprofit organizations, one of the problems that we have that I don't think anybody is really focused on this me being totally honest. We have a huge now I know that when we talk about intervention in crime, we're not just talking about white and black. But let me just put it out there because I think the reality is the majority of these programs we're talking about are coming from urban environments. When you come from urban poor environments, the larger majority of these larger urban environments are African American. There is a huge divide between the African American community, and it has been. I mean, we can go back to the civil rights movement. There's different philosophies in the terms of the people who follow Malcolm X and the people who follow Martin Luther King, the people who follow the Panthers, the people who follow Fred Hampton. Totally different ideologies and mindsets. And so now in society, you have the more affluent, you have the more professional, educated African Americans that head up these organizations, and we're generations removed from civil rights, and now some of the people running these organizations don't know shit about the community. I mean, nobody wants to say it, but just because you black don't mean you know what the hood is. But for a lot of, I think white people who are in government establishments or who are heads of big businesses and corporations, you're going to look to, okay, this is African. A lot of these problems stem from African American community. I need to talk to a relevant source, somebody who's validated. They're going to validate the people that went to school with them, the people that have the education that are professional. And so if these people say, hey, this is what the community needs and give me this money to run this program, um, y- you know, i- in order to criticize that, that criticism is likely going to have to come from the African American community. So when you have African American communities saying, "Oh, they ain't doing shit for us, they don't do nothing for," you hear that when you go to the hood and you go to these inner cities, people like, man, they ain't gonna do shit for us. I don't care what organization you name. You get these big 501c3s, they're not really helping people. There's a lot of politics and bullshit that go behind that, and go behind the people who are going to get the jobs and the values that they have. So the only people who can really challenge that are going to be street people. And that's where some of the divide is happening. Some of the divide is, well, they're not like us. They're not a part of this club or this membership, or they don't want to do this. So some of those people, that it's an internal conflict, for lack of a better word. You know what I mean? There's a huge divide there with our communities that need to be addressed. I mean, let me put this out for intervention work and things like that. A lot of intervention programs and a lot of nonprofit programs work with the police, and they feel like, hey, that's fine. We should be walking, lock and step with the police, and we should be doing commercials with the police and things like that. Where organization like ETV, it's not that we're anti-police, but we know the sentiments of the community, and we know what police are doing. So we let police do their job, and we work with people from a community standpoint. And I'll give you a really clear example of that. Law enforcement believes in the snitching model. They believe it's helpful to go into the community and turn everybody against each other. They believe it makes sense to take a dope dealer out the hood, put him on payroll so he can turn in all his colleagues or friends or enemies or whoever. They think, well, of course we would do that because it's helping us lock up more criminals. EDTB, our response to that is, look, the biggest problem in the African American community is unity. So why the fuck would you turn everybody against each other and feel like you're helping the problem? It's a different ideology. So fundamentally, I feel like you can't sit out here and say you're doing intervention work and you're engaged in the community when you're in a role that's adversarial. So if you're one of these organizations that are supporting the agendas of the police officers, people don't trust you. People don't trust you because they don't know what they're going to get. And it's the snitching model that creates a lot more of the unrest in these communities than people know. But people think, well, they're arresting the criminals, so aren't they doing good? No, you're making more. You're making more. You're not going in here showing that here's some opportunities for people to change their behaviors, change their life, sustain themselves. You're going in here just paying people to create more discord in these communities. So now this person is snitching. How many murders happen behind this person snitching? Hello. How many murders happen behind the person that hooked the person up who's now snitching? It doesn't make sense. So from a community standpoint, we know they don't care. We know they don't care about us, but it's hard to criticize some of these people that have a platform and that are high profile. I mean, if this has been community leader, yeah, if your community leader's taking pictures with the Obamas, everybody just assumes, well, they're the greatest person since sliced cheese, but they might not be doing shit for their hood.
It still supports the business model. We talked about the prison industrial complex. Now we're talking about the nonprofit industrial complex, a real thing. And we talked about the 6 and 7 figures that go into the coffers, but then let's go two steps further. One is, not only do you have the funds that go into the coffers of these nonprofits, however, you also have the salaries of the executives, the executive directors, and so on and so forth. And we're talking about 6-figure salaries, sometimes $500,000 or more, depending on the size of the organization. So then what happens is, and I'll use a real life example of a nonprofit that was helping educate early childhood education in lower income situations. Right? They were offered a grant from a foundation of $125 million. Okay, to solve the challenges with early childhood development. So the chairman of the board, personal friend, was sharing with me that he asked them, he said, hey, if we could solve this problem with this 125 million, would you all be behind this? And the answer from the board was no. And the answer was no. And he said, why? The answer was no, because they said, if we solve the problem, then we're out of a job. So this whole intervention play, are we aiming for intervention towards solution, and so that we can, have a legacy that goes forward, or intervention so that we can continue to intervene on a regular basis? And so that's what we're faced in a lot of ways. That's what we're facing.
Absolutely. 100%. And here's another thing. Who the fuck is coming up with these outcomes? Like how they measure the success of programs is crazy to me, because everything is this quantitative. We touched 100 kids. It doesn't matter where the kids came from, but you got the names down there, So we touched 100. We passed out 10,000 flyers. We did all of this. You look at all these dollars being spent on that, and ETV in the violence is we're the very lower end of the spectrum for funding for nonprofit organizations that actually do intervention work. Now, there's a lot that say they do intervention, but it's more prevention. We're at the low end of the spectrum. Here's something that doesn't make. They attribute in Central Ohio about $2 million conservatively at the cost of every gun murder. So every homicide that happens at the end of a gun costs the taxpayers about $2 million, right? We know, go do all the fucking statistical analysis you want. You know that it's a small group of people who are committing these crimes, right? Small group of people who commit these crimes, overwhelmingly the larger portion of crime. And we attribute a huge amount of cost to the taxpayers. In the violence, easily 90% of the participants in that program have been associated with a murder or a shooting. Even our teenagers in a program have shot multiple people. The teenagers have shot multiple people. So these are, in essence, the most dangerous people from your statistical analysis, the most expensive group. Because if they're not working with us and we're not training them, they're not doing community advocacy, and we're not every day sitting here reprogramming, helping them get assessments, helping them stabilize their lives so they can be a part of our team. If they're not doing that shit, then they're out here committing crimes. So just one of them will cost you easily $2 million. Now, you take all of them and you consider, if you don't have a program like ETV, how many people are fucking getting killed? And there is no one who's willing to sit down and say, hey, we can draw that association. We want to fund you to do more of what you do. Sean Stevenson, Dr. Sean Stevenson, when he came home from prison, this dude opened a bookstore on the east side of town, Mount Vernon Avenue. So for anybody from Ohio looking, yeah, you remember Sean's bookstore over on Mount Vernon Avenue. And he's wait a minute. Yeah, yeah, Mount Vernon. Either Mount Vernon or Long. It's been a while since that bookstore. I think it was Mount Vernon. But anyways, long story short. So he's bringing kids in from the neighborhood. This dude been in prison 20 years. Come on, no funding. Open up the store because, hey, he can't read or write. But he like, if these dudes have some, shit to read or write, they're going to stay off the streets. So I can talk to them. We have participants in the program now who actually are supervisors, who were teenagers when he came home. Nobody's looking and saying, look, all of those guys could have been huge costs to the city of Columbus, to our efforts and what we're doing. But that's because he doesn't look as flashy and glamorous as some of these prestigious heads of some of these organizations out here that people can say, well, that's a nationally known 501c3, and I know they do good work, and look at who the president is, and look at where they went to school, and look at who they're friends with. Of course, these are heads of these organizations can bring in campaign contributions and dollars to elected officials and many things like that, but it does not mean that they're effective in helping the community.
Absolutely.
So let me ask the question then, because in Columbus alone, there's over 100 different nonprofits out there to end the violence, curb the violence. Why is everyone so siloed in this market? And I'm pretty sure Columbus is just a snippet of the nation. Why are there such horrible turf wars? Is there a reason why they can't work together in order to take care of this problem that cost the taxpayers $2 million a murder?
Well, it's politics, so everybody's fighting for 501c3 resources. If you're a nonprofit, everybody's fighting for resources. So it comes down to what is your true mission. If you're an administrator, or let me ask you this, are you more concerned with keeping your employees employed, which means that you got to constantly get funded to keep your employees employed, or are you more concerned with helping the community? Because if you're more concerned with your employees be employed, then you're going to make decisions that aren't in the best interest of the community. So that means if the city puts out a grant and says, "Hey, now, I'm gonna put some money into after school education," same prevention organization, but like, well, I need to run after that money. A lot of people chase the money and the outcomes.
Chasing dollars.
Chasing dollars. I love it. So is there any time you believe that these nonprofits will all sit down and say, hey, we're going to get more money if we pool our money together and work together and maybe get better results?
I almost feel like where we are now with Doge and the austere measures that our government is taking in a lot of areas, I think a lot of these programs will be called into question because we can no longer go with what we discussed another time called noblesse oblige, where we simply say, "Hey, we're gonna throw money at this because if we don't, it makes us look bad." You know, Atiba's talking about the 2 million per shooter that the cost, but some of that cost, it's a cost, but it goes back into the pockets of nonprofit organizations. It goes back into the justice system, the lawyers, everybody involved, the counselors, everybody. So it's a broken cycle that has to be addressed. And I think now where we are with I think every podcast I mentioned a digital transformation of everything, where we are with that, where we're going into I call it a technical omnipresence of those who are in charge. They have they are now able to look at all that's happening, not just the data of 100 kids that were affected, but now the full data. I think accountability is going to come into place now, where those dollars are going to be given out for real outcomes, just like in healthcare, value based. And I think that's where we're heading. And because these young people can't continue to be going down this pipeline because that won't work for the new digital world. They can't be out in the streets doing these things. And we have CCTV in the UK, and other countries have, especially in Europe, have included CCTV. America already has CCTV, except for the fact that we don't acknowledge fully that we're under that kind of scrutiny. China, whatever China has, we'll have eventually. So the biometrics and all these sorts of things. And then that gun, they have this thing where if a gun goes off, they're able to triangulate where that shot was fired, and all the cameras can pick up and stuff. So, crime that you used to be able to get away with, it's becoming less of a thing to be able to get away with it. So we're heading into a time, a new era of sorts, era, however it's pronounced, where we're just not going to be able to get away with what folks got away with in the past. So all of that changes. The whole dynamic changes of where we are. Yeah,
I agree, and I think here's what else is going to change. We're going to start going tough on crime because crime's gotten out of control. And the one variable I think that everybody's missing is it's going to be really, really hard to deal with the situation that's been created in our urban environments and inner cities in this country. And it's way more volatile than I think people are really letting in credit. The thing that I would say is we also got to remember it's by fucking design. It was all designed like this. Solving these inner city problems and changing how these communities are is not that fucking difficult. It is not that difficult if you really want results. But it goes back to what Pastor Andre said. He said it. They don't want the problem resolved. If you resolve the problem, all you have to do is build community. If you build community in these inner cities, right? Take all these people who are committing these crimes that aren't going to prison now. The prison systems aren't going to exist to the extent that they do. If they're not going to the courts and their structure is not going to exist to the extent that it does. Local police departments, you go down the list, right? Now take those same communities and you make all those people living in those communities productive citizens. Now, those same communities, these same inner cities can compete with other inner cities. You take inner cities in Columbus that can now compete with all of the suburbs and all the contiguous counties in the rural areas. Guess what? All those roads being paved in our neighborhoods, we're going to be bidding on those jobs. Industries, we're going to be bidding on those industries. It's about money now. So now we can say, hey, build a stadium over here in this neighborhood. We're going to take care of it. We're going to keep it up. We're going to build the hotels. Let our people invest in the infrastructure in these communities so that we can eat. It pisses me off that we like to play in this country like the problem in these inner cities is not by design. It's by fucking design. They know what they're doing. No one wants to be truthful about it, because if you're truthful, you have a real conversation about sustainability. These communities won't need any of that. Because what's the real problem? Is the real problem violence, or that they can't fucking feed themselves? Why is everybody resorting to selling drugs and doing? You think that's just what people wake up in the hood like? Yeah, now that the rap industries can controlled by larger media, they make it sound like that. No, our kids don't wake up and just want to be fucking associated with crime. Unless you promote the music, unless you spin everybody in that direction and take away the resources that exist there. If I Me growing up, what options do I have in this neighborhood? Where do I see anybody? When I grew up in inner city, come on, man, I didn't see anybody who I looked at and said, that's a successful person who I want to be like. Now, that's just be honest. I didn't see a lot of that. I moved to Atlanta. It really changed my psyche because I started seeing people that really had things that I can relate to and I can associate with. But you didn't really see those opportunities. So if I'm growing up in an inner city that is impoverished and we're not building up that inner city, then everything that's good in that inner city that you deem as good academically, professionally, is going to leave. So if I go away to this school and I come back and now I'm an attorney, no one's saying, hey, let's open up law firms right here in the hood. Let's open up some different resources right here in the hood.
Where he left off, the the in the community, right? What we talked about a few podcasts back. We talked about the old system being a system of exploitation, right? Old system being I was talking about Atiba. Old system being a system of exploitation. And leading up to today's podcast, I was thinking about the fact, we talk a lot about the system and what the system does, and then of course we got to talk about self accountability, right? But if a system of exploitation is in place, the exploited people oftentimes will respond to the stimulus, right? That's being thought. Like you said, if you're hungry, if you're broke, if opportunities are not, it's happening all over the globe. It's not just in America. It's happening in poor communities all over the world. But exploitation doesn't work well in the new system that is being set up. And if we don't know a new system is being set up, our eyes are closed, right? But what the new system sets up is that you are irrelevant, and you are irrelevant because you don't take personal initiative to do what you need to do. And so that's where the young generation, we have to educate them that you're no longer just going to be exploited for the $2 million they can make off of you. You are now going to be considered irrelevant and can be sent off to Alcatraz that can hold 20,000 prisoners that they're talking about spending $64 million to rehabilitate so they can put prisoners there. Just like in healthcare, the hospital is going to be dealing with acute patients, and the rest of the folks are going to be at home, that are convalescing at home directly after surgeries or whatever if you're not acute. Likewise, I don't know if you call them acute criminals, but the most violent criminals will just really be considered, they don't want to be a part of society in the proper way, so they're irrelevant, and we're going to send them off. And that whole complaint of, oh, you're exploiting our young people will go away, and the focus will be more on these more, acute measures that they take.
So let's go into something really quick, because there are a lot of these nonprofits that have gotten in a lot of trouble, right? Especially when their books have been opened and they look at it. Yet they're also the ones that tend to get the funding continuously every year, even without without any retribution for all the we'll just call it shady stuff they're doing. So how do these smaller nonprofits that are really trying to make a difference stop from getting stonewalled because of the political clout that these bigger 501c3s have?
I mean, it's a magic question because this is one of the problems that we have in America. This is one of the problems with society. It's why when you look at agendas in Washington, they don't those do you ever see our legislature pass laws and bills around what the majority of people want? No, all that shit is done for the political action committees. All that's done for the lobbyists and small. The money is America. It's the American way. We follow the money here. So nobody want. It's the same way you talk about curing the inner city of crime would be like the American medical system trying to cure diseases and sickness in America when it feeds the whole medical industry. It's a model. So the same way we have a treatment mentality when it comes to medicine, we have a treatment mentality when it comes to the hood.
And two things, Atiba, you mentioned earlier that name recognition is a big deal, relationships and name recognition. So these big organizations are going to get the money right off the rip. They're already the money is probably apportioned to them prior to it even being announced, because it's like these organizations, we know we can get these numbers from these organizations. So the answer to me is more obvious. It's an obvious answer. When we really utilize the data to show that crime has declined by X percentage versus we had 100 kids for a photo op, in the t-shirts for our organization, when we can actually get to that level of accountability, that's when we will know that it's now being taken seriously, But other than that, nobody wants the budget to be cut because the effectiveness is not there. So everybody's just going to keep pushing it down the road from the funder to the one receiving the funds. Everybody just keeps going. The audits come through, and as long as you check off certain boxes, but more than likely it's the wrong boxes.
And if I'm an official at the local government level, do I really want to fund somebody who's going to challenge me on my policies and who's going to be advocating for the community? No, I want somebody that's going to be aligned with me. You're on my team now. So if I come in here and I'm fucking up, I don't want somebody that's going to say, you're not doing it right. I want somebody who's going to stand on the camera with me and say, we need more money because it's just not safe and we're going to create a new department. Yeah,
Fair.
it's all yeah, absolutely.
But let me flip that. How about those 501c3s that threaten to support the person running against that elected official, or use their political clout or their funds or their quote unquote power to threaten their political career? Isn't that a bunch of crap? I mean, that happens all the time.
Now, see, here's the thing, and what local? Okay, don't take this offensive, but let me just say it like this: you tell me an urban community right now in the United States where you really got two parties competing for offices. Tell me where that happens. We're all these local communities are Democratic communities. I mean, let's just be real. So, how much are these people really being challenged? I mean, come on, look at California. California is a poster child for bad politicians getting elected over and over. And I won't name them because the last time they pulled the whole clip off of TikTok. You know what I'm saying? But it's no different here.
I don't think this episode's getting up on TikTok, but what I'm trying to get at is, let's say there's two Democrats that are running. You got the elected one and the one trying to unseat that Democrat, right? Let's just say in the primary. There are a lot of these 501c3s that use their power to keep the funding coming their way. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And what you also see, so years ago, I mean, I can go back 3 decades when I was in Huntsville, Alabama, and nothing has changed. I've seen that it hasn't changed, that those are the incumbent and the person running against them, depending on who fill their coffers, they'll pass that through nonprofits that will go and give chicken dinners and cash to individuals to go and vote. and vote a certain way. And it has worked. And whether or not that person, the person running for office, is going to benefit the community, it was a chicken dinner and $40 that got him out. Now that was 30 years ago. Now it should be more like $200 and a shrimp dinner.
Right. And it's all agenda driven. So, if you're talking about two Democrats running against each other, first of all, the party's going to work that out. The Democratic Party's going to work that out. And the Democratic Party has a lot of power, has power from the local level all the way up to the national level. So it's career suicide to really, now there may be some situations where they say, oh, we're going to let you two hash it out. But how invested and how much does the community know? And what pool does a small nonprofit organization have politically? What kind of money do you think, if they could raise money like that, they'd really be kind of resolving the problem? So it's really difficult when there's not checks and balances like that. And I think we got to like really start taking a common sense approach to all these systems in the United States. I'm glad that the federal government is shaking everything up. Maybe people will start to pay attention. The more educated people are, the better chance we have, because educated people, and I don't mean you went to school, I just mean you just listen to these podcasts, listen to some information, read a couple books and think about it, and you would say, you come up with quick solutions for dealing with some of these problems. And then when you jump in there, it's like us at ETB, it's like, man, we got a great solution. You jump in there to solve the problem, and you got all these barriers against you. You have to be realistic that the barriers were put up to protect these persons. The barriers were put up to protect and make sure the money gets funneled where the shot callers want the money to go. That's just the reality. The money's going to go where it wants to go, because if I'm an elected official, or if I'm a person at an organization that has any kind of control and influence, I'm promoting my circle. It ain't about nobody else. It's about money and power.
So let me ask you, we'll close this because we're going to do two parts on this one. Let me close this session with a call to action. When you have a 501c3, Atiba and Pastor Andre, sorry, say, hey, we've stopped hundreds or dozens of shootings without any evidence of police reports, any studies at all. What would you want someone to ask that 501c3 prior to donating to their cause?
That's a great question.
I mean, yeah, that is a great question, because the only way you can really validate your claim is to have evidence. Now, yeah. So, but that most people look at the evidence coming as, quantitative evidence. I would point to, the proof is in the pudding. So if you're out there working with the most dangerous people, because that's who we know are out here committing the majority of these crimes, if you're working with those people, we should see evidence of you working with them. Again, 90% of ETV that is employed there is what was justice involved, or is justice involved, both. We have people working there with ankle monitors. So if you say you're out here curbing crime, you should at least have evidence of the shooters that you have. I would want to see, are you going to court with and have relationships with the people that committed the most heinous crimes? Like, if I see you down at the court and you're always sitting with dude that is responsible for gang war, 20, 30 killings, who's sitting with him? Because if this is who's creating most of the crime, the organization's working with them, that's evidence to me. But again, other people locally here, I don't think they see that as evidence. I don't think you could bring in an ETV, and we can sit down with a few of the intervention specialists there, and you know what? I'd say this: give their names to the police department and ask the police department how many people they suspect even that they were involved with murders. It will blow your fucking mind. So you would think by that kind of whole narrative that people will be knocking down the door saying, we need you. Because guess what? If we're employing the shooters and the shooters aren't on the street, less people are going to, you're going to have less people shot. I mean, that's how I look at it. Really, really, you know, without getting into how can, because in order to do some of to track some of the information that you can, it comes with a downside. So some of the people that we're working with in the community to keep the community safe, we're not law enforcement, so they don't look at us the same way. The way we can get in their door and talk to them, the way we can reach some of these people is because we're not sitting here looking because you got, you know, dope on the counter or something. We not, oh shit, there's dope on the counter, let's call the police. If our concern is violence, see that is a different model for a lot of people out there. They think that if
Mandatory reporter.
exactly, you're a mandatory reporter and everything, you can't go into these communities and work with these people if they think you the police and you setting them up.
I'm gonna. I'm glad you spoke first, Atiba, so I had a chance to think about my answer. And you know, I'm gonna take a page out of the healthcare current model of healthcare. They had a fee for service before. They were making a killing, regardless of whether or not you got well, right? So now they're moved to a outcome based model, and so they have outcome based payments. And so I think that just the handing out of funds because you ticked a couple boxes needs to end. And if we're truly going to make that difference, we need to go to an outcome-based model where. So I'd ask that nonprofit: are you willing to have the accountability and openness? You know, what's another word for openness? Like where your exposure is like transparency, and be willing to either return funds or only get funds based on the effect that you've had. And then we've got to address real outcomes that we're looking for that would make a difference. I know that might sound, you know, novel in some instances, but it's happening up in other sectors. I think if we're really ready to make a change in this sector, we'll be willing to do the same thing.
Well, with that, I just want to close with saying to everyone who's listening and watching that there's nothing wrong with being a disruptor. And a lot of these smaller 501c3s are just that, being a disruption. Disruption is not a bad thing. Disruption is how this country gets better. Disruption is how we change the narrative. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome, that is truly the definition of insanity. Just think of that. Think of that next time you open that checkbook. Think of that next time you want to make a donation to a foundation just because they have someone with high political clout saying it's such a great thing. Gentlemen, it was an absolute pleasure. We will talk to you all next time. I hope, Atiba, next time you maybe have some more caffeine so you were pretty mellow today. Andre, it was good seeing you as well.
Hey there.
And we'll talk to you all next time.
All right.